You're listening to the Health and Happiness Podcast with Travis Kemper and
Lauryn Maxwell. Each episode, we share easy to implement strategies to improve your health, happiness, and overall quality of life.
Perfectionism. It's about fear. Fear of making a mistake, fear of disappointing others, fear of failure, fear of success. Michael Law. How's it going, Travis?
good. We were in Rocky Mountain National Park this weekend for a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Julia found some last minute reservations, so that was cool. It's gorgeous. Duke made it less than relaxing, but it was still a good time. And we're leaving on Saturday for a week in South Dakota to visit the Badlands and I don't know, Custer State Park and whatever mountain range there is there. How's it going, Lauren?
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm
Yay.
excited.
Exciting. It's going good. Yesterday was mine and Nolan's 13th dating anniversary.
Congrats. That's a
I
long time.
That's a long time. I can't. We were 18 and 19 when we started dating, and now we're 32 and 31. Or
Wow.
whatever. I said that in like two different orders, but whatever. Um, yeah. But
It's true, you
anyway,
did.
it's a long time. I baked a strawberry bourbon crisp for the occasion, which I've never made before, and I just like love baking, so that was
Was
really
it
fun.
good?
And also, yeah, it was so good, and it was actually so easy. I could like tell anybody how to make that, and anybody could make it. It was so fun,
Cool.
so easy. And we got to spend lots of quality time together, which is always fun. We also got lots of rain, which helped the fires hopefully get fully contained. I can't like find whether or not they're contained. When I look it up, it's from like 4 days ago. So
That's interesting. They usually update that pretty quickly.
I know that's what I thought, but I'm assuming with all the rain we got yesterday that hopefully they're like fully contained now.
That's awesome. I was hoping you guys were getting the rain. I didn't want to mention, we've had a really rainy June, but I didn't want to mention it to you because I was like, if they're still burning like crazy, I'm just an a-hole.
No, we finally like all this week it's been raining like at least a little bit every day, but yesterday it like poured. It was great.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that will hopefully make for a better rest of the fire season too.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we start this episode, I wanted to make a note of one thing I forgot to mention in our last episode on people pleasing that really helps me, particularly in an instance where I think someone might be mad or upset with me, because if you remember, that is a really big deal for people pleasers. So my strategy that helps me a lot is to remind myself that I am not responsible for other people's feelings, and that if they are truly upset with me, that it is their responsibility to tell me that, and then we can go from there. But it's no use to anyone if I just worry about whether or not someone might be mad at me and then let that mess with my whole day. So reminding myself that really gives me a lot of power back in that situation. So I wanted to mention that in case it helps anybody else. So, what are we going to talk about today, Travis?
Another one that I picked just to pick on you. Perfectionism and strategies to overcome it.
You didn't pick it to pick on me. I offered it up because I feel like it does go hand in hand with the people pleasing stuff. So it
I
makes
think it's
sense.
a great follow-up.
Yeah, makes sense to talk about. So to start, we are going to, well, I'm going to read a journal entry of mine that I found from my first year of PT school when I was thinking about quitting. I remember writing this as a way of recognizing and working through some of the perfectionistic tendencies that I have, and it helped me to like realize the impacts that they can have on my life. So this is from September 16th, 2015. I've always struggled with my inner perfectionist. I'm not quite sure when it started, but even my earliest memories involve getting frustrated because I couldn't pronounce split pea soup or spaghetti for the life of me, and I couldn't read when my brother was able to, given he was a year and a half older than me, but I didn't understand that then. I remember when I got a little older, I meticulously rehearsed my dance routines in my bedroom so that I didn't miss a step the next time I set foot in class. I spent hours making my own costumes for each recital so that not a single bead was out of place. And I remember the crippling fear when my dance teacher wanted me to audition for a big dance company. What if I wasn't good enough? I took private lesson after private lesson to prepare for my audition. I breathed, slept, and ate dance. My feet were blistered and my legs were bruised and my body hurt. No matter how much I prepared, I didn't live up to my own expectations. My leaps weren't high enough. My toes didn't point enough. My hip hop was never sharp enough. I never got low enough. My face didn't express enough. My love for dance turned into a constant fear of failure. I never auditioned for the company. I stopped dancing shortly after. I miss it every single day. This is the spiral I've known my whole life. What I love somehow turns on me and reminds me of all the ways I can't live up. I go through crushing phases of insecurity. There are some days when I don't feel like my own body is good enough and my spirit writhes underneath it. Some days I have my walls built up so high I don't know how to get out. The perfectionist in me wants to say that as I've gotten older, I've learned to embrace my perfectionism and fear of failure and have turned it into something positive. The perfectionist in me hates that I haven't overcome perfectionism, that I haven't figured out how to balance my perfectionism with optimism and ground it in realism. I've gotten better at managing it overall, at recognizing it for what it is and trying to use strategies so that I don't stop doing something I love out of fear ever again, like I did when I was younger. And I haven't, but it still creeps up and affects a lot of small aspects of my life. I think it is often directly related to my need for control, my need to feel like I have control over even the most obscure things in my life, which of course is rooted in a lot of other things, and also my fear of being unworthy and unlovable and not enough.
Wow. Lauren, how hard is it to read that, knowing that people are going to hear it? And what feelings do you get when you read that 7 years after you wrote it?
It is not something I thought anybody would ever hear, for one. So yeah, it makes me really sad, I guess, to read it and to know like the depth of the feeling and how crushing it was. Um, and sometimes still can be, but mostly was, reflecting on it, just like thinking of the little kid in me who quit dancing because I was so afraid of failing at it when I loved it so much, and how feelings like that can really take away the joy out of things. Like I love dancing, I still love dancing, and like I can't even imagine the choice that I made to give that up back then. Um, it's hard to read. It's definitely hard to read over, and it's hard to say out loud because it's like I didn't I don't talk about a lot of those with other people very often. But I'm hoping that maybe by reading it out loud and letting other people know that like that's stuff that I've gone through, that maybe that's relatable and maybe that can help other people recognize some of the like more serious effects that perfectionism can have, which is like I didn't get to live through my joy of dancing because I decided to not do it out of fear.
Yeah, I'm sure that somebody is listening to this and being like, oh my gosh, she's just like me.
Yeah.
I think most people deal with some level of perfectionism. Probably my assumption, not based on any research at this point, my assumption would be that it's probably from trying to garner approval from adults, their older siblings, their parents, teachers, etc. Like you just want to be perfect for that person so that they will give you the love that you desire as a child. That's my guess. I definitely have some level of it, but not to that crippling level. I would quit things for other reasons. I know even for my patients, they often struggle to see progress due to the focus on perfect. For example, many of my patients that I work with have either chronic pain or balance issues or a combination of both. And they will get discouraged after a few weeks due to the feeling like the end is unreachable, while forgetting that on their first day, their pain on the 1 to 10 scale was double what it is at present, or their balance abilities have increased dramatically. Like I have patients that legitimately couldn't stand up more than 2 times in a row. One patient I'm working with currently, he would stand up 6 times in a row and without exaggeration be huffing and puffing like he just ran a sprint. And last week he was dealing with some of these feelings and he was upset with himself for not improving enough, and we did the just stand up as many times as you can. He did 16. This is only 3 weeks later.
Wow.
So I look at that as the physical therapist and I watch that and I'm like, dude, how do you not see this? And I have to try and communicate this over and over. And we have these baseline tests of the 6 times. We did, Lauryn, you know what the 30-second sit to stand test is. Yeah. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before. It's a very simple test to do. He didn't make it for the 30 seconds. So he had some like explosiveness in the beginning to get to those 6, but he couldn't make it. And now it's like he did 16 in a row without a break. And honestly, he wasn't even out of breath. His legs were more tired than his chest. So
huge.
Like I look at that and I'm like, dude, that's amazing. Like you just said, but he looks at that and from his internal perspective, he's like, yeah,
not enough, not perfect.
But I could do so much more before I was hospitalized or whatever.
Yeah.
So what is perfectionism? Perfectionism is the belief that whatever you do must have no error or mistake. You might even feel unworthy, less likable, or like a failure when you make a mistake. A perfectionist is constantly striving toward perfection with the belief that imperfection is unacceptable.
Signs of perfectionism. A lot of people are perfectionists in specific areas of their life. This doesn't need to necessarily be in every area to be a perfectionist. If you find yourself wanting to achieve perfection in most things you do, you might be a full-time perfectionist. Some clear signs that you might be a perfectionist include you cannot start a task until you are sure you can execute it flawlessly, which often leads to procrastination, which I think is kind of a funny thing, but these two often go together. Like, I don't know that would have, like, if I wasn't a perfectionist, I don't know that I would have looked at that and been like, oh yeah, perfectionism and procrastination make total sense together. But like, woo, yeah.
No, I think that's a type that almost everybody has.
Yeah.
Like afraid to jump in the game when we don't understand the rules, and afraid to do everything due to the fear of failure.
Until you know that you can do it perfectly. Yeah.
Right, which you'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never be able to do it perfectly. So you'll never do it, and then you end up with regret.
Yeah. Another sign is that you take much longer than others to complete the same task. You see the end product as the most crucial part of the task. So like the end, like it being done is the only thing that really matters. If it's not perfect when it's done, then it's not done. You think a task is not done unless you think it's perfect.
It's almost like you know these perfectionist tendencies and don't need the notes.
Them without even looking at it.
So there are 3 different types of perfectionism. While they have similarities, there are some key differences. The 3 types are personal standards perfectionism. This type of perfectionism is primarily healthy because you are motivated to achieve your high personal goals. Thus, you have lower chances of burnout or stress. You are less likely to inflict self-harm due to stress from attempts at perfection. Other people might think your standards are too high, but that only gives you motivation to complete the tasks. Self-critical perfection is the type of perfection that might cause you to feel intimidated or like you will never achieve your goals. The hopelessness this causes may lead to issues like anxiety disorders, stress, self-condemnation, and avoidance. Socially prescribed perfectionism. Here, perfectionism is demanded by an outside source. This can come from a job or career that requires maximum precision, like a doctor or lawyer. People in these professions are more likely to have thoughts of hopelessness, stress, self-harm, and even suicide. Individuals with high social or cultural expectations placed on them may also be subject to socially prescribed perfectionism.
So some causes of perfectionism, I think we've already talked about some of them. But factors known to cause perfectionism include fear of failure, feeling the need to please other or please parents,
I
please
nailed that
any
one.
yeah, any like teachers, anybody that you're wanting to please. Um, Wanting to be admired or loved by others. So again, I think this goes with a lot with people pleasing stuff. Mental health problems like anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, feeling insecure or inadequate, attachment problems with parents during early childhood, and being a previous high achiever.
So there are some negative health impacts of perfectionism. So research has found perfectionism to be linked to severe mental health issues. Some of these mental conditions include burnout, stress, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, obsessive compulsive disorder, eating disorders. Other lifestyle issues that may arise include low self esteem, frustration, procrastination, and relationship issues.
We've got a couple of research articles to talk about that go along with perfectionism. So, one was a 2019 article that reflects on 30 years of research on multidimensional perfectionism. And this article defined the 7 truths of perfectionism. So, those are one, perfectionism is about people. Which makes sense. It's about like your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people, and how that affects everything. Perfectionism is unique. Perfectionism is a personality construct that is related to other personality dimensions, but it is simply unlike any other personality construct. It is also unique to each individual. Not everybody who um, has perfectionism tendencies reacts the same way to everything or is triggered by the same things. It is unique to the individual. 3, perfectionism is global. You can find perfectionism across the world. 4, perfectionism is complex. One of the authors describes perfectionistic overstrivers as compulsive and meticulous, but also quite complex because they are governed jointly by the approach and avoidance tendencies as they strive for success to avoid failure. As a result, for them, quote, learning becomes a highly conflicted process, end quote. I will validate that for sure. Learning was like being in school was like the thing I was good at, so it like was really a good thing, but also it was a terrifying thing because I was so afraid of failing at it that it became like this love-hate relationship. It was very complicated. 5, perfectionism is a paradox. People with exceptionally high standards are prone to experience prolonged negative arousal and self-criticism while pursuing their personal life goals due to their intense focus on the discrepancy between the actual and the ideal. I think the paradox thing makes total sense. Like you can't be perfect and yet you're striving for it.
Right. So you're constantly disappointing yourself.
Yeah, always.
But everything you do is really, really good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was the perfect way to say it. Thanks, Travis. 6, perfectionism is relational. Many people strive to be perfect as a source of validation in a misguided attempt to have achievements that will gain them the love and respect of significant other people, or to be flawless to avoid rejection, harsh judgment, and abandonment. Number 7, perfection is, quote, a problem in living. A central challenge for perfectionists is that people must learn to live with their failures and mistakes, along with the consequences of these failures and mistakes. Thus, in some sense, perfectionism poses a problem in living with oneself.
So another one, there's 2018 meta-analysis that looked at perfectionism in the workplace. And the results of the conceptual and empirical review of perfectionism research showed that the answer to the question, is perfect good, is that in total, perfectionism is likely not constructive at work. The consequences of high levels of perfectionism, especially failure avoiding perfectionism for employers, do not appear to be equally counteracted by its advantages. I'm going to make a side note here. I feel like it is really good in like bookkeeping. and accounting.
Yeah.
Like those people need to be a little bit perfectionism. That is not a place that I should be working in.
Right. Yeah.
Because I hate doing stuff that's fine detail like that. So, but I could see it's very valuable in those fields. Physical therapy, not a great field to be having to need to be perfect all the time because people are imperfect. So
Yes. Yeah. Got it.
that would make it tough.
It's a
Sorry,
challenge
Lauren.
for sure.
Yeah. While some aspects of perfectionism may be beneficial for employees and organizations, overall perfectionism has a detrimental impact on employees and organizations. Performance displayed virtually no relationship with perfectionism or its dimensions. So perfectionists do not outperform.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy. In my brain, I'm like, I
Yes,
think
we
I'm
do.
think I'm doing so good, and it really isn't making a difference. At least for perfectionism, I am doing a good job in my job, but not because I'm a perfectionist in my job.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So treatment of perfectionism, this is why why I want to do this episode, why I want other people to hear this is because there's ways to treat it, but also to like overcome it. So therapy can be used to overcome perfectionism by managing the root cause of perfectionist behavior. So there's cognitive behavioral therapy. This type of therapy shows the perfectionist that perfection is not necessary in everything they do. It teaches them that errors are acceptable and should not stop them from pursuing what they want. Hypnotherapy helps manage the all or nothing mentality that is found in most perfectionists. And family systems therapy. Here, therapy is used to find out how perfectionism came up in the family unit and how it affected the subject as an individual.
So you can try to overcome perfectionism without relying on therapy. Some things you can do on your own to help manage your perfectionism include make a list of advantages and disadvantages of trying to be perfect. When you make your own lists of costs and benefits, you may find that the costs are too great. You may discover the problems with relationships, excessive workaholism. Holy cow, I struggled there. Eating and substance abuse problems and other compulsive behaviors actually outweigh whatever advantages perfectionism holds for you. Increase your awareness of the self-critical nature of your all or nothing thoughts and how they extend to other people in your life. Learn to substitute more realistic, reasonable thoughts for your habitually critical ones. When you find yourself berating a less than perfect performance, whether your own or someone else's, force yourself to look at and acknowledge the good parts of that performance. Set strict time limits on each of your projects. When the time is up, move on, attend to another activity. This technique reduces the procrastination that typically results from perfectionism. Suppose you must find references for a term paper and also study for the exam. Set time limits. Learn how to deal with criticism. Perfectionists often view criticism as a personal attack, responding to it defensively. Concentrate on being more objective about the criticism and about yourself. If someone criticizes you for making a mistake, acknowledge the mistake and assert your right to make mistakes.
Also, sorry to
Go
interrupt.
ahead.
I wanted to add on to that is the one thing I tell myself when I'm taking criticism, and that like if somebody is criticizing me for making a mistake, they are not telling me that I am a mistake. They are telling me that I made a mistake. And that is something I think that is really helpful to remind yourself if you are a perfectionist.
They also are taking that time because they care about you and or what you're doing.
Yeah, most
So,
often people are telling you out of the kindness of their hearts, not because they're
correct.
trying to make you feel bad.
Be realistic about what you can do. By setting more realistic goals, you will gradually realize that imperfect results do not lead to punitive consequences you expect and fear.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that mistakes are not bad and celebrate them. Pursue different things that matter to you and make you happy. Avoid focusing on perfecting only one thing.
So, some examples of alternative statements that you can make, like when you recognize you're having a perfectionist thought or reaction, rephrasing it into an alternative statement can be really helpful. So, if you're having a thought, this one happened to me a lot. Since I didn't make an A on whatever exam that I just took, I'm a failure. That's a perfectionistic statement. Change that if you hear yourself say that to yourself, change that into something that is like, it is unlikely that my grade on this exam will have an impact on what I am doing a year from now. Zoom your lens out. Another example of a perfectionistic statement: my haircut looks terrible and I am terrified of being seen in public. An alternative to that would be, people on the street are much less interested in my hair than I am, and they probably won't even notice. Besides, my hair will grow back eventually.
I wrote a quote recently that said something to the effect of, everybody is worried about what other people think of themselves, but nobody's thinking anything about you because they're all focused on themselves constantly.
Exactly. You're too worried
something
about...
to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People are too worried about what they think about themselves to think about anything.
To think about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To spend any time thinking about you.
Yeah.
Healthy goal setting. So what is the difference between healthy goal setting and perfectionist goal setting? Healthy goal setting is based on wants and desires. Healthy goals are one step beyond present or previous achievements. Pleasure can be derived from the process of working towards the goal. Disapproval or failure can be seen as to a specific situation. Perfectionist goal setting. Goals are based on expectations of others. Your goal is perfection or the best at all times. The focus is on the end result, not the process of working towards the goal. That's what we talked about with my patients. Disapproval or failure is generalized to self-worth. They see that a lot too. When trying to overcome perfectionist tendencies, perfectionists can be their own worst enemy. Perfectionists tend to set goals that are both high and difficult to achieve, therefore causing distress when they are unable to meet unrealistic goals. Therefore, it is important for perfectionists to learn to set realistic, smart goals. Along with healthy goal setting, take note of your current abilities. For example, if you make a goal to run a mile and in 3 weeks you're getting down on yourself because you can still only run a half mile, you will have a much better chance at continuing on this path of running a mile if you wrote down how far you ran without stopping each day. If you could only run a block today and in 3 weeks you can run a half mile, you're doing amazing. The mile will be here in no time.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, Travis, is to like focus on the progress, not the end goal. Like, that's huge. Because
I see that one all the time.
Yeah, you do make progress. Like, even if it's just a little bit, that's something to be celebrated. And that's really helpful in reframing the like perfectionist mind. Yeah, that's a great point. So a challenge for this week: look at your life for something you're wanting to improve. Instead of just being upset that you aren't where you want to be, perfection, write down where you are right now in relation to that goal and what action steps you're going to take this week, next week, etc., in pursuit of that goal.
Awesome. Lauren, this was fun.
This was fun.
Great job today.
You too, Travis.
Thanks for opening up. I didn't expect you to bring your journal article in.
Yeah, I wasn't really planning on it, but then I found it and I was like, well, this is, exactly what we're talking about.
Well, thank you everybody for listening, and please leave us a review if you have not already, and we will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and are getting benefits from our content.
If your life is improving in part due to the information in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate you sharing the episode with your family and friends on social media and leaving us a review so we can continue to reach more people and improve the health and happiness of the community at large.
Thanks again, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast.